You think you've already seen everything in Highlands Fishing? I've just found 13 things the developers never mentioned anywhere, and some are so well hidden you might miss them even after hundreds of hours. Let's start a little investigation into the strangest secrets of this add-on. When we enter the house and go upstairs, in one of the rooms we find a laptop, and on it, Farming CPT, an obvious nod to ChatGPT. Interestingly, I don't know if it's down to some graphics settings, but even on the highest details, the image on the laptop screen is quite blurry. So I dropped a screenshot into real ChatGPT to read what's written there, and you can see its answer on the screen right now. Did it interpret it correctly? Hard to say, but it's a very cool little Easter egg either way. It's kind of funny because Farming Simulator is getting more and more self-aware. We've got AI in the fields and now even a virtual ChatGPT in the game. I wonder when we'll get a robot that makes silage by itself. Since we're already in the house, if we go a bit higher, up to the attic, we'll find a rather odd TV. There's a scarecrow on the screen, and the image is very noisy, as if it's losing signal. Some players even claim the image changes depending on the weather. I didn't notice that myself, but who knows, maybe it's just a matter of time of day. If any of you check it, let me know. When I first saw it, I thought it might be a reference to the American map, specifically that it's a screen from that map where you also find a scarecrow. But that one looks a bit different and stands in a different setting, unless I missed one, and if so, tell me where to find it. If not, share in the comments what you think this could be referencing. Speaking of references, we can't skip those little stones, which probably aren't randomly scattered rocks, but a nod to Stonehenge, one of the most famous megalithic structures in the world. That distinctive circle of massive stone blocks is near Salisbury in England. The map is set in Scotland, but Scotland isn't far from England, so it's quite possible the devs felt it was worth adding this small touch. Moss isn't something you see on every roof in real life, but it's not that rare either. So I ran a little experiment and carefully examined the roofs on both the American and the Asian maps. As you can see, if there's anything there you could call moss, it's more like a flat texture or just dirt. Of course, someone might say it isn't moss at all, but something else entirely. I'm bringing this up because on the Scottish map, moss appears on a huge number of roofs. And interestingly, it doesn't look like a flat texture, it looks more like a 3D element or something that imitates that effect. Either way, it isn't completely flat, and it honestly looks really good. It's nice that the developers polish details like this because when they do something properly, it's hard not to notice, and in this case, you can see it on a lot of roofs across the map. As you probably know, you can grow mushrooms in greenhouses, but let's be honest, most people associate mushrooms with the forest. And here's the surprise, I explored the forest on the American map quite thoroughly. It's small, sure, but I didn't find a single mushroom. On the Asian map, the forest is much larger, and yet also no mushrooms, which is why this is a fun detail. On the Scottish map, you actually can find mushrooms in the forest. They're not particularly big, and they're a static part of the environment rather than something that pops up after rain, but they're there, and that's a definite plus. As for what species they are, I'm no expert, so if you know, share it in the comments. To be honest, I thought there were some holiday decorations on the American map too. Maybe they only show up during the real holiday period, or I just forgot where they were. Either way, it's not that important because on the Scottish map, they're really hard to miss. Set the month to December and the whole map gets beautifully decorated for Christmas. It's a neat Easter egg mainly for people who didn't buy the DLC, but even owners of the add-on might have overlooked it. What's more, besides the Christmas vibe, if you set the month to November, you'll also see Halloween decorations. They're a bit more modest, mostly pumpkins, but it's still cool to see, and on an original map rather than only in modded versions like so often before. Unless I missed something on the original American map, if so, correct me in the comments. I think some players might not know this, even on the base maps, but each one has more than one playable farm. On the Scottish map, which really caught my attention, there's a second farm with cows. It has a pretty solid cowshed and a few interesting farm buildings. To be fair, the main starter farm does look a bit nicer. Still, it would be great if we could choose which farm to start on before launching a save. For example, pick horses instead of cows. I mention this because there used to be a mod that let you do exactly that. And since I've mentioned horses, there's no way to ignore the forest where you can find a horse. That intrigued me because you can actually buy that forest. Of course, I had to check whether after buying the land, you can mount the horse. Unfortunately, you can't, so I went a step further and tried loading it into a horse trailer, but that didn't work either. A shame because it would have been an awesome Easter egg. Either way, there's a stray horse running around the woods and bulldozing through the terrain. And it's nice that it's a real moving animal rather than a stiff decorative model like we often see. Players who have already expanded their farms might have noticed an interesting new thing, if we can call it that. I mean, one of the bunker silos. More precisely, the soil that surrounds it. What's special about it? That ground isn't a fixed texture. It automatically adapts to the terrain where you place the silo. It's a clever solution because without it, we'd have to level the ground around the silo ourselves, which would cost a fair bit if we wanted it to look good. This way, the silo adjusts itself and looks natural on any farm. I mentioned this before in the episode where I tested the easiest way to make money in this DLC. And if you haven't seen it yet, you definitely should. But now, let's go a bit deeper. We can no longer sleep in an unowned house. Someone commented that you can just go upstairs because there's a bed there. And that's true. The problem is, to go upstairs, you first have to open the door. And to open the door, you have to buy the house. So unfortunately, no more free sleepovers. Guess Grandpa doesn't like us anymore. Instead, you can buy a tent for $500. I ran a small experiment and found something interesting. On some plots you can buy, there are already tents placed there. Funny thing is, even after purchasing the land, you can sell or use those tents. They probably symbolize that someone else is living or camping there. But if you try to place your own tent before buying the land, the game won't let you. So yeah, some are more equal than others, and once again, our wallets take the hit. I've already mentioned several details on this map, but there's one more worth pointing out. Near the river, you'll find a building with a large water wheel turning with the flow. It looks great from the outside, but interestingly, if you go inside, you'll see additional moving parts of the mechanism that you can't see from outside. Someone clearly put effort into designing that, adding interior detail even though most players will never look inside. And that absolutely deserves praise. Speaking of details, we have to talk about the river itself, especially the spot where the water drops to a lower level. You can see waves forming there, and they look really well done. What's interesting is that they're not uniform. You can spot multiple patterns and directions of flow, creating a very natural effect. It's a small touch, but really well executed. And that's the difference between a map made with passion and a map made just to get it done. Even the water has personality. And finally, something that actually came first and might make some of you suspect I've got inside connections at Giants. I predicted fish in Farming Simulator before they were even announced. I even made a short about it. On the American map, there's an area that looks exactly like a fish farm, abandoned or unfinished. It's funny because when I recorded that video, I didn't think it would actually come true. Maybe someone at Giants saw it and thought, hey, that's a good idea? Who knows? My theory was that after buying the DLC, the area would unlock and we'd be able to raise fish there. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Even with the DLC, the plot remains locked, you can't buy it, and nothing has changed. So now I'm wondering whether the developers had planned this DLC all the way back during the base game's development, or if maybe some designer just added it accidentally as a small artistic Easter egg. Let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and see you soon.